There's a specific kind of loss that doesn't feel like losing at all. It feels like time running out on something you thought would last forever. No dramatic collapse, no villain, just a clock, ticking down on a man who spent his whole life racing it, and for once, not winning. 82,000 people inside MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. Extra time, Argentina down to 10 men, and in the 106th minute, a substitute named Ferran Torres does something small and final. He puts a football 8 yards from goal, into the net, past a goalkeeper who has already made more saves in a World Cup final than anyone in history. Spain 1, Argentina 0. Full time. Here's the strange part. In 20 years and 33 World Cup matches, this man had scored or set up a goal in 11 straight appearances at the tournament, a streak nobody else has ever managed. On the one night it mattered more than any of the other 32 combined, the streak ended. 0 goals, 0 assists, 15 touches, less than half of what the teenager marking him managed on the other side. Funny thing about being the greatest of all time, the ending doesn't ask permission. His name is Lionel Messi, and this isn't the story of how he lost a World Cup final. You already know that part. This is the story of how a kid who was too small for professional football grew up to make the sport's biggest stage his personal stadium 6 separate times, and what it actually means to watch someone's last chapter close in real time in front of the whole world. Before you write this off as another sad ending sports video, stay with me, because to understand why this final loss cuts as deep as it does, you have to go back to a different final, 12 years ago, in a different stadium, when a 27-year-old Messi did something on a podium that a lot of people never forgave him for, and almost nobody understood at the time. We'll come back to that. First, you need to know where this all started, because it starts nowhere near a stadium at all. June 24, 1987, Rosario, Argentina, a gritty industrial city 300 kilometers from Buenos Aires, better known at the time for beef exports and a soccer-mad working class than for producing the man who'd eventually be called the best to ever play the game. Lionel Andres Messi was the third of 4 children born to Jorge, a steel factory manager, and Celia, who worked at a magnet manufacturing workshop. Football wasn't a hobby in that house. It was the family language. His 2 older brothers played. His grandmother, Celia, walked him to youth training sessions before he was old enough to tie his own boots, and according to family accounts, it was her insistence that got a 5-year-old Messi onto the pitch for Grandoli, the local club, in the first place. She died before he ever played a single professional minute. He has said, more than once, that he still looks up at the sky before he shoots penalties. That's not a poetic flourish added by a documentary editor. That's a habit, small, private, and his alone. By age 10, he joined Newell's Old Boys, the Rosario club that considered him a phenomenon almost immediately. His youth team run there is still nicknamed the Machine of '87, a squad that reportedly went years without losing a match with Messi on the ball. He was already the best player in every room he walked into. There was just one problem nobody in that room could fix. At around age 10, Messi was diagnosed with a growth hormone deficiency. Doctors in Rosario put him on a treatment plan, nightly injections into his own legs that he'd have to keep taking for years to grow to a normal adult height. The medication cost roughly $1,500 a month. His father's health insurance covered it for a while. Then it didn't. Newell's, the club that adored him, couldn't or wouldn't pick up the bill either. For a family in industrial Rosario in the late 1990s, that number wasn't an inconvenience, it was a wall. So think about that for a second. The single greatest talent Argentine football had produced in a generation, and the thing standing between him and a career wasn't a rival, wasn't a coach who didn't rate him, wasn't even his own ability. It was a monthly invoice his family couldn't pay. If you've ever had a dream that came down to money you didn't have, you already know exactly how this feels. Here's the lesson inside that struggle, and it's one worth sitting with. Talent has never been the rare part. Access is the rare part.
Messi had the gift already fully formed before he was a teenager. What he didn't have was a system built to notice a 5'0" kid from a steel town and say, "This one's worth the investment." Keep that in your head, because in a few minutes, someone is going to make exactly that bet on a napkin in a country Messi had never lived in, and it's going to change everything. That's the loop we're opening right now. Don't forget it. What happens next sounds almost too tidy to be true. It isn't. It's documented. It's on paper, literally. And it's the reason a kid from Rosario ever set foot on the biggest stage in sport at all. In 2000, the Messi family flew to Barcelona for a trial with FC Barcelona, arranged through a family connection to a scout who'd been tipped off about the boy. Barcelona's youth setup watched him for a matter of days and knew. The problem was the same one from Rosario, just with more zeros attached. Barcelona's board was slow to formally approve signing an unproven 13-year-old foreigner and covering years of expensive medical treatment. Carles Rexach, the club's sporting director at the time, wasn't willing to let the moment slip while paperwork caught up. As the story goes, confirmed by Rexach himself in later interviews, he didn't have a contract on hand at the restaurant where the family was finalizing the deal. So he asked for a paper napkin, and on it, he wrote out the terms of Barcelona's commitment to sign Lionel Messi, right there at the table. That napkin isn't a legend. It's been publicly displayed by Rexach and referenced across countless verified retrospectives on Messi's career. A napkin held more weight than a boardroom. The family relocated to Spain. Barcelona covered the growth hormone treatment, and the kid who couldn't afford to grow up big enough to play the sport he loved was suddenly training inside La Masia, Barcelona's legendary academy. The same pipeline that would later produce Xavi, Iniesta, and Piqué around him. He made his first team debut for Barcelona at 16. He was the club's top scorer in history before he turned 30. But none of that, not one trophy, not one Ballon d'Or, is the story this video is actually about. This video is about 6 weeks, 5 times over, wearing a different shirt, Argentina blue and white, at the World Cup. Messi's first World Cup came in 2006 in Germany as an 18-year-old substitute, a preview, nothing more. 2010 in South Africa, he played every minute and still finished without a goal, eliminated in the quarterfinals by Germany 4-0 in what remains one of the most lopsided results of his career. 2 tournaments, no real trace of the guy dismantling defenses for Barcelona every weekend. The gap between his club form and his country's fortunes became its own national obsession in Argentina. Pundits, presidents, taxi drivers, all asking the same question: why doesn't it translate? Then came 2014 in Brazil. 27 years old, finally the unquestioned leader of the team, Messi produced 4 goals in the group stage and dragged an otherwise unspectacular Argentina squad all the way to the final. Rewatch that tournament and you'll see a version of him playing with something close to fury, carrying a team that by most metrics wasn't good enough to be there without him. Argentina met Germany in the final at the Maracanã, scoreless through 90 minutes. Then, in the 113th minute of extra time, Mario Götze entrolled a cross on his chest and volleyed it past the goalkeeper. Germany 1, Argentina 0. Messi walked off that pitch having carried his country to a final it had no business reaching, and still lost it in the cruelest possible fashion, 7 minutes from penalties. He was named the tournament's best player anyway, the Golden Ball, his first. And when he stepped onto the podium to collect it, wearing runners-up silver instead of the trophy he actually wanted, cameras caught him walking past the World Cup itself without turning his head to look at it. Not out of disrespect, out of something rawer than that, the specific private refusal to make peace with a thing that isn't yours. That image followed him for years. Remember it. We're not done with it yet.
2018 in Russia brought a different kind of heartbreak. Eliminated in the round of 16 by a rampaging French team, 4-3. Messi setting up 2 goals but scoring none, extending a knockout round goal drought that dated back to his 2006 debut. Compare that resume at that point to the man standing across from him in that French shirt, a teenager named Kylian Mbappé, scoring twice, announcing himself to the world at 19. 2 generations colliding on the same pitch, one exiting early and one just getting started. For a moment, it looked like Messi's World Cup story might simply end there, unfinished, an all-time great with every trophy except the one that mattered most in his country's imagination. But here's the thing about the greatest of all time. They don't get to write the ending on the world's schedule.
They only get to keep showing up until the ending writes itself. And in Qatar, in 2022, at 35 years old, an age when most elite footballers are already retired, coaching, or commentating, Messi showed up one more time. What happened over the next month would either close the loop from that walk past the trophy in Brazil or open an even deeper wound. There was no in-between left, not at 35. Somebody believed a 5-year-old boy belonged on a football pitch before he'd proven anything at all. His grandmother, walking him to training, insisting he play. Somebody believed a broke, undersized teenager was worth years of expensive medical treatment before he'd scored a single professional goal. A sporting director, with a napkin and a pen, because he couldn't stand to let the moment pass. That's the same bet I'm asking you to make right now. If you're still watching, you already believe this story is worth finishing. Subscribe before we get to the part that makes that belief pay off. Qatar, 2022. Argentina's opening match of the tournament. And disaster. Saudi Arabia, ranked 51 places below them, beats Messi's Argentina 2-1 in one of the biggest upsets in World Cup history. Messi scores the opener from the penalty spot, and it doesn't matter. Saudi Arabia scores twice in 6 second-half minutes, and the stadium in Lusail turns upside down. Back home, Argentine sports radio doesn't call it a setback. It's covered like a national funeral. At 35, in what was widely assumed to be his final World Cup, his country had just lost to a team many had never heard of. Picture the locker room after that. Not the highlight reel, the real one. A 35-year-old captain, the weight of an entire nation's 40-year wait to a title sitting on his shoulders, one loss away from the earliest exit of his career. His coach, Lionel Messi, later described the mood in camp as somewhere between shock and disbelief. A team that had gone 36 matches unbeaten, suddenly staring at the real possibility of a group stage elimination. Messi's own wife, Antonella Rucuzzo, has spoken about how quiet he was in the days that followed. Not panicked, just withdrawn, absorbing it alone, the way he always has. Argentina had to win every remaining match to survive. No margin, no second chance. And they did. Mexico, then Poland, then a knockout run through Australia, the Netherlands, and a penalty shootout that turned into one of the most chaotic matches in World Cup history, and Croatia in the semi-final. Messi setting up a goal with a piece of skill against Josko Gvardiol so cruel it went viral within minutes purely as a highlight of humiliation. Argentina were back in a World Cup final, the same stage where, 8 years ago, a 27-year-old had walked past a trophy he refused to even look at. This is the part where you'd expect the story to simply resolve, cleanly, the way it does in the movies. It didn't. December 18, 2022, Lusail Stadium, Argentina versus France. The same France that had ended his 2018 World Cup, now led by that same teenager from 2018, 4 years older and even more dangerous. Messi scored twice. Argentina led 2-0, then 3-2 in extra time. And then Mbappe, alone, scored twice more in a stretch of minutes that felt like the sport itself holding its breath, forcing the match to penalties. After everything, the napkin, the walk past the trophy, 36 matches unbeaten unraveling against Saudi Arabia, it came down to a shootout. Argentina won the shootout, 4-2. Messi converted his own penalty along the way. And when the final whistle confirmed it, the image that circulated within seconds wasn't a photo of the scoreline. It was Messi, hoisted onto his teammates' shoulders, in a black bisht draped over his kit by the Emir of Qatar, lifting a trophy he had once refused to even look at. 8 years, one final loss, one near elimination, and a teenager growing into his fiercest rival along the way, and the loop finally closed. He didn't just win the World Cup. He became the first man to win the Golden Ball twice, an honor he'd first collected in 2014 as the best player on a losing team, and now claimed again as the best player on a champion.
Present day, 2026. Same continent, different stadium, this time on American soil, a tournament co-hosted for the first time by the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Messi, 39 years old, defending champion, playing what he'd openly acknowledged would be his last World Cup. And for a while, it looked like one more chapter of the same magic. A hat trick against Algeria at 38 years and 357 days, the oldest player ever to score 3 in a single World Cup match on a date that fell exactly 20 years after his tournament debut as a substitute. 8 goals and 4 assists across the tournament, a silver ball, a silver boot, and a World Cup career total of 21 goals. The most any player had scored across history, at least for a few days, until Mbappe in the third-place match scored twice more to edge past him. Then, the final. Spain, unbeaten across the entire tournament, conceding a single goal in 8 matches, suffocated Argentina from the opening whistle. No shot on target in 90 minutes, a red card in stoppage time reducing Argentina to 10 men, and in the 106th minute of extra time, Ferran Torres. The 11-match streak, scoring or assisting in every World Cup appearance going back years, ended on the one night it mattered most. Messi collected his runners-up medal. He took off his boots. In stockinged feet, he walked toward the traveling Argentine fans and stood there, arms behind his back, listening to them sing his name, not for the trophy he didn't lift, but for the 20 years he'd given them anyway. It's worth knowing that same stadium had broken his heart once before, a decade earlier, during a different tournament final in a different shirt of the same colors. This time, there was no more napkin left to write, no more medical bills to cover, no more growth to wait for, no more finals left on the calendar for a 39-year-old body. Just a walk, one more time, to the people who never stopped believing the bet was worth making. Here's the thing nobody tells you about greatness. It doesn't get to choose its ending. Messi didn't get to leave the World Cup stage on a trophy lift with confetti falling exactly the way the story should end. He got a 1-0 loss, a red card, a streak broken, and a walk in socked feet toward the people who loved him anyway. And if you're waiting for this video to tell you that's a tragedy, it isn't, not really. Because somewhere between that napkin in 2000 and that walk in 2026, the actual story stopped being about trophies at all. It became about showing up at 39 when the smart money said retire, about playing an entire final without a shot on target and still refusing to fake an exit early, still applauding your own fans instead of sulking off the pitch, about being the best player in the tournament twice, 2014 and 2022, and this time, at 39, still good enough to leave with a silver ball nobody expected from a man his age. You will lose things that matter to you. Not maybe, you will. A job, a relationship, a version of a dream you built your whole identity around. And when you do, the measure of you won't be whether you won. It'll be whether you were still standing there, arms behind your back, present for the people who showed up for you instead of somewhere else, pretending the loss didn't happen. Messi's grandmother walked a 5-year-old to a pitch he wasn't tall enough to dominate yet. 20 years later, a stranger with a napkin bet on him before the world did. Somewhere in your life, right now, someone is making that same quiet bet on you. The least you can do is show up for it. Funny thing about the greatest of all time. In the end, he wasn't undefeated. He was just still there, boots off, listening. Maybe that's the only ending that was actually true. Thank you for spending this time inside a story that honestly didn't have to end the way it did, and told us more about how to lose than almost anything he ever did in victory. If this hit you the way it hit me putting it together, tell me down in the comments, were you rooting for Argentina in that final, for Spain, or honestly, did you just want to see Messi go on top no matter the shirt? I read every one of them. If you want the next chapter of this same World Cup, because Messi's story wasn't the only ending written in that tournament, there's a 19-year-old Spanish defender who spent the entire final marking runs, closing gaps, and doing the invisible work that let his more famous teammates shine. Everyone assumed the story of Spain's midfield belonged to one 17-year-old prodigy. Nobody expected the quiet kid a few positions back to be the one who actually made the system work. That's next. Pau Cubarsí. Nobody expected him to beat Lamine Yamal. He did it anyway. See you there.